Friday afternoon, I think, so good afternoon. Last session before lunch, so I'll try to keep it short because I know you're all hungry from all the beer you had last night. Now you need to have a layer for the beer for this evening. But let's talk a bit about deduplication in Windows Server 2012 R2. Unfortunately, I only have 40 minutes, so I'll have to kind of speed up, but as Adrian said, I will normally run around here somewhere, and if you can't find me, it's downstairs outside, having healthy air. Then you can always ask questions afterward. The idea is, however, that by the end of the session, you kind of know what you need to know to start using deduplication in your own environment. That's the idea, with the tips and the tricks, especially the tips of it, because just enabling it can be quite dangerous. So let's have a look on our agenda. So first I'm going to talk about what is deduplication. There are still people that think deduplication only exists on a storage SAN or something, but that's wrong. There's much more deduplication, and you're probably using deduplication already today without knowing it. We're also going to look quickly at how you install it and configure it. It's pretty simple, but you have to know how to do it. So very quickly, I have quite some movies in this presentation. How you can do it. Unfortunately, time restraint, I'm probably going to have to skip a few, but I heard that afterwards I have to put the slides to Alex, and you can download them, and the movies will be in there so you can see them anyway. I'm going to quickly look at the architecture, how it's actually doing, and then we're going to talk about VDI, because now deduplication in Windows Server 2012 R2 is supported in a VDI environment, and it actually is very interesting, saving lots of storage, but also giving you faster responses of your VDI, which is kind of strange because you deduplicate it, but the way it works will make sure that you have faster responses. We're going to look at some results, we're going to look at some conclusions where you have to look up, and so on. So, what is deduplication? If we look at Wikipedia, it will tell you the term deduplication refers to eliminating duplicate or redundant information. That's it. So now, most of the time, people say, yeah, storage. If you think about Exchange, at least it used to do, it uses deduplication as well. If you look at SQL, it kind of has an engine inside that does it as well. Whoa. It got dark now. Really? So,
what is Mike?
I'm gone. Fantastic. I'm not on the video anymore. Anyway, the fact is deduplication is used in many things. Even Microsoft has been using deduplication since Windows Server 2000. Oh man, now they see it again.
No.
If you look at the WinSXS folder, which we all hate because it's large and what can do it, in fact we're using a concept called hard links, which is deduplication in itself. If you look now at the Windows Server 2012 or even 2008 and 2008 R2, and you enable a feature and you're going to look at the size of your operating system, it hasn't changed. Because the only thing what happens is they're going to put a link to that folder. So they're using already deduplication in many cases. There are much more. Instant storage used to be also a deduplication. It was not good, but it existed. And now with Windows Server 2012, Microsoft went for a new thing, and you need to know some differences how it works. So with deduplication, you've got different methods that you can use. You've got inline versus post-process. Basically, inline means the moment you're writing, it's getting deduplicated. Post-process means we're going to write it as a whole first on a disk, and at a certain moment, we're going to deduplicate. Microsoft is using post-process. Which basically means you first need to have the storage before it will be installed. Keep that in mind, right? Then you have source versus target. Source means the data is getting deduplicated at the source, which Microsoft is using because you're writing on one of their volumes. Target is used at backup world. When you have some repository for your backups where you're storing your backups, then you first have your production data, then you deduplicate it to a target to another location. Yeah. Microsoft in this case again uses source because it's source in volume. And then you have different methods to figure out how you're going to deduplicate it. You got file-based, which is of course not that well because then you actually need two files who are exactly the same. And if you got one file where you change one letter, one cell in a spreadsheet or whatever, you lose the duplication. And other methods which are very much more popular is block-based. Block-based means you're going to choose a certain block size and you're going to look for the same blocks. If you find the same block, you're only going to write it once, and then all the rest are pointers to it. What Microsoft uses is actually chunk-based. And chunk-based is kind of the same as block-based, only the block size is not defined. That means the algorithm behind it is going to search itself what the ideal block size is. And it will change that the entire time. So you can have blocks of this size, blocks of this size, blocks of this size. It will calculate itself and see what gives you the best benefit specifically for it. So that's what Microsoft uses chunk-based. All right. I already talked about this. This is old Microsoft single instance store hard links. They do have some experience in it, but now they completely changed. By the way, and this is kind of an not that much known, but it was built by an engineering team in India, and they spent 4 years just working on the algorithm. 4 years. And what is also not known is originally it was built to be for the medical world, because in the US you have these rules where you have a patient, you have to keep all that data, and after that patient dies, let's say at 80 years old or something, they still need to keep it for 100 years. 180 years of patient's data. Can you imagine how much storage these guys need? So that's specifically where they built for it. And then there's the story, which we're not certain if it's true or not, but suddenly one guy of the Microsoft Windows Server team that was built in 2012 came in, had a beer with these guys, and then they said, hey, we're doing this, and we're like, I want this in the operating system. And that's how it got in. I'm not sure if that's an urban legend or not, but it was originally designed for something else. 4 years just for the algorithm. By the way, there's a book on the algorithm. If you're very good at mathematics, you can read it. I tried 3 pages and yeah. That was about it. Important is when you start by using deduplication, because it's really, really easy to use. But you have to think about your planning. First you need to know, where am I going to use it? Not on everything. Do not do it, and we'll come back to that. Then we're going to have to look at the hardware requirements. What do I need to sufficiently support this? Luckily it's not much. What are unsupported configurations? They do exist. Right? And then we're going to evaluate our savings. You can have an entire file server with certain specific types of data. It has terabytes of data and say, hey, cool, deduplication, and save 2%. And do you really want to enable deduplication for that 2%? And lose resources or not. Now you can evaluate that. You can check out how much you're going to save. And then we're going to look at the policies. There are some default policies, but you can change much of them to fit to your specific needs. And that's also going to be rather important, certainly if you've got some more data than the traditional 100 gigabyte share or something like that. Okay? So let's have a look, and let's look at what we're going to use it for. It works perfectly for file shares, virtualization files, but not running virtual servers. It's not supported. It works, but it's not supported. That'd be clear, yeah? If you got operating system deploy files or ISOs that you downloaded from Taghead or MSDN subscription, Taghead doesn't exist anymore, I think. And it also works very well on backup files. In fact, if you forgot for a second who I'm working with, but our deduplication and compression together with Windows Server 2012 works very well. If you take into some considerations, we'll come back to that point, right? It could be that it actually works very well on web servers, specific line of business service, HPC, or static content. If you think you got an entire farm of web servers that are all the same thing, it might give you a lot of savings. Why? Because many of these DLLs and these .NET and these whatever, I'm not a developer, so when they throw those terms at me, I have no idea what they're saying, but basically they're the same modules. They're the same stuff, so you can get a lot of savings. Well, you have to test it out first before you're absolutely certain. Yeah? Some will work, others maybe. Do not, I know it says poor, but do not use it on your Hyper-V host because support of Microsoft will be 0 to start with. Do not use it on your Exchange databases or on your SQL databases. Because that content is constantly moving, which means none of the cycles will actually be able to succeed. Funny thing is, if you do this in a lab environment or a demo environment where you're not receiving emails every 5 seconds, you will actually say to me, you're lying because it works. Yeah, but in a real environment, it just will never get to that cycle. So you're just wasting resources. Plus again, not supported. And then this one is also important. If you have files over 1 terabyte, do not do it. The reason is post-process, so it's got a certain amount of time to finish a file to be duplicated. Windows Server 2012, everything over 1 terabyte did not work, and there was a bug at that time, which means it started to repeat and repeat and repeat, and you finally had to disable it, exclude that specific file or move it away or break it, whatever, and then start over again. Windows Server 2012 R2 is a little bit smarter already, so it realized it, and it can actually, if you got a good size server, probably go files to 2-4 terabytes, but it's a risk that it doesn't make the cycle. And of course brings me back to this one. If you got large backup files, the combination might not be the smartest. Yes?
Why not Hyper-V host?
You cannot run a running virtual machine. Is not supported. VDI is, but I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of time before Microsoft says, hey, running virtual machines are supported as well, but today, no.
Except not supported, but any known problems?
Actually,
It's a testing thing.
Yeah.
I haven't tested it, so
Because it
is
works.
a support issue.
I
Apparently, I've talked to some storage people, apparently it does work rather well. Are you going to be talking about performance with VDI?
yeah.
So I'm not going to steal any thunder.
You can.
Apparently it performs really well. They are not sure because they haven't tested it.
Okay.
And until they stress test at scale, they won't support something.
Understood. Yeah.
So
That's it.
don't do
Yeah.
it, except for what you
You
might
do it
hear
in the
about
test
later.
and lab environment.
Lab environment, dev
Yeah.
environments.
Yeah, Johan Arvidmark
What?
Johan Arvidmark tweets constantly about the rates of compression he's getting in his
Yeah.
mobile test lab.
On the other hand, don't forget, of course, what I just said, if you're using virtual machine managers, virtualization files, so that library where you store your templates and your ISOs and your saved virtual machines, great savings, right? Very good. So you can do that. All right. We know what we're going to use it for. We decided. What about the installation? Before you want to do the installation, you can use this tool, DDP-eval. And that tool, give it to a volume, will actually tell you more or less how much savings you're going to get. By the way, this is more or less. This is not exact science, but you will get at least an idea what you're going to save and whether it's useful or not, right? So you can do that up front. From the moment you're going to enable deduplication on that volume, you cannot run that tool anymore. So don't forget that. First do it before you're going to do it. So, what do you need at least a Windows Server 2012. I do advise if you start with it to do it in R2 because there were some small bugs in it in the previous version. They are resolved, right? And you need one single CPU, a minimum of 4 GB of RAM, and at least one SATA disk. That's it, right? Sounds stupid, but yeah, you need a disk. Does it run on a virtual machine? Sure. Yeah, it's got disk as well, so there's no issues, right? So that's run. Now, why do you need this? Because the moment one of the jobs, and we'll come back to the jobs in a couple of minutes, kick off, it's going to use an amount of resources, but it's limited. It can, per volume that it's going to dedupe, it can only steal 25% of your memory, which is good, right? Otherwise, your server might be having some issues, okay? That's one of the reasons. But you can, with a very simple setup, start running the deduplication. By the way, in my labs, I do it with 512 MB RAM. Does it perform well? But it's possible. It's just, to get some decent performance and to get those cycles around, they ask you to do this. And there are two ways to enable it, or you're a GUI guy and you're going to say add remove features, and then it's kind of a little bit hidden under file and storage services, and then you say data duplication, right? I believe I actually say, yeah, GUI based, or PowerShell import module server manager add Windows feature name fs-data duplication, right? And then you import it. You don't need to import the modules if you're running it straight on the server, then you're importing. But if you want to remotely do it, you need to do it on a Windows 8 machine or something like that. So, I'm going to skip this one. It's pretty easy. I mean, I'm running through next, finish. We don't care. More importantly is then we are going to look at what we can do. So we enabled it. Now it's ready, but actually didn't do anything. The server just has the role enabled, nothing more. And then we're going to have to decide where we're going to enable it, on which volume. So it's per volume, you need to select it, right? Also means if you got multiple volumes and you're going to enable it on multiple volumes, that means different tasks can run at the same time, depending on your resources. If you only have one large volume, you can only run one task at the same time. So this is something you can keep in mind if you're considering this. You might want to split up some file servers in different volumes, just to make sure that multiple parallel tasks run. Important is it does not run on the boot or the system volume. So the C drive, as most of us say, you cannot enable on that. Microsoft's official reason is because you would lose performance. Now, because we know it's actually a filter driver on top of NTFS, we rather think if your server boots, it won't be able to touch that boot volume because the filter driver wouldn't be loaded yet. We think that also might be an issue. But yeah, we're not certain, but the official reason is because of performance. Okay? You can use MBR GPT, no problem, but it has to be NTFS for now. You know other support is coming. Well, they won't support FAT anymore. Forget about that. But REFS, you know. You can use it in MS failover cluster. Doesn't matter. You can work with that. Today, as Adrian helped you out already, not yet on CSVs for your Hyper-V host, although if you use VDIs, then yes. So again, it just did. No RFS, said that, and no remotely mapped drives. On the other hand, if you are, you know, playing or traveling a lot or have a lot of these USB devices, the fun thing is if you're connected to a Windows Server 2012, you get a whatever F volume or something, enable deduplication, you can completely deduplicate that drive, take it away, go to the other side of the world, attach it again to a Windows Server 2012 that has the role enabled, only the role enabled, and will be able to read out all the data. I actually use it on my devices to travel and not to have such a stack of USB devices. And since most of the things I carry around are for demos or virtual machines, I'm saving a lot of space. So it's perfectly doable. Yes?
Would it be functional for VHD files that are mounted locally?
What was the question?
Just a VHD file that I mount in the server manager locally.
Yeah.
It appears as a physical disk.
Mm-hmm. As a volume.
As a volume.
You can do that, but
Why?
yeah, it's better to have the volume that has the point VHD and do that. And just take the example of Windows Server 2012 R2, right? It's installed by default, it's with the GUI, it's got 10 gigabytes, more or less, right? Nothing else enabled. If you deduplicate that one file, you will get 3 points and a bit. Imagine you got 5 VHDs, 10 VHDs. So you're saving a lot that way than going inside and doing the deduplication inside, right? Where's my phone? Here it is. All right. And then we continue to think, right? Can it be deduplicated? Again, there are some certain file types that cannot be deduplicated. Why? The way they are, the way they are stored. Mostly if you are in the graphical world, you will meet certain types that are not that well. You can exclude those, so no issues there, but you have to know it. Do you start on an empty volume? If you got a file server of 50 terabyte and you say, cool, I want this, enable, you're in for a bad time. Don't do this Monday morning because on Friday evening your end user will still be complaining that there's something wrong, okay? So do not just start with it, make sure this happens in phases. Come back to that. Do I have enough resources? Let's hope so. And am I not doing it on an unsupported config? Okay, forget. Remember SQL, remember Exchange. It's not that it's going to be a problem, but imagine you got an issue with your Exchange database. You call Microsoft support. They look at that and the first thing they see is, ha ha, it's on a deduplicated volume. Sorry. There you are, right? So just try not to play with it. And then we're going to look at the settings. By default, it will only start deduplicating files that's the default, last modified 3 days ago. You can change this to 0 to be very aggressive, or you can say, no, maybe I want to be a little bit more, say 5, 10 days. But the default is 3 days. Okay? So this could be one of these rules you can use if you really have that 50 terabyte server. They can start, I start with 20 days, so I can, 10% of my file server. And then I'll take it down to 50 days, take some more percentage of my server, and do it in a couple of weeks to make sure you're not overloading that server. So that would be a way. By default, the schedule runs every hour. It means every hour it will look, do we have new files that are ready for deduplication, that are within the rule time vault, and let's start. And let's deduplicate. Yeah? So if you start with 0 days, and then the first time kicks in, he sees the entire disk as ready, not a smart thing, right? But every hour you can do it. We can trigger it manually as well, I'll come back to that, but by default, in the background every hour. Can you change that? Yes. How? GUI, PowerShell, or if you're going to look at task scheduler, you will actually see that task can be modified there as well. Perfectly possible. By default, you will have some exclusions. EDB files, GRS files are by default excluded. If you really, really do want to deduplicate them, you can change that. I don't see why, but yeah, but you can add exclusions. If you say, I do not want to deduplicate my .dif files or my .tif or my whatever, you can add those as well. Just like you can actually exclude folders as well on a specific volume. And then important is, besides the every hour deduplication job, there are 2 more jobs that happen on Saturday. If I'm not mistaken, the garbage collection is at 2 o'clock and the data scrubbing is at 3 o'clock in the morning. Change this schedule if you are running your backups around that time interval or whatever other maintenance you're doing on Saturday morning. Because this is very intensive on resources. This is okay, this is limited in resources, this is not okay. This takes a lot of resources. Now what does it do? Garbage collection is actually going to seek all the blocks that are not used anymore by any file. Because what happens if during the week on a Monday and you say shift delete a certain file, you will see that the size of that volume does not change. It will only change after the garbage collection has not been done on Saturday. Of course, you can trigger that whenever you want to, when you really need that day at a time, but normally by default. The data scrubbing process is actually going to do a lot of checks and see if all your blocks are still healthy. There are many mechanisms to find out that everything is healthy, and this is one of them. It's going to look for, if it finds blocks that it's not, it thinks this is wrong, it will start making work on it. It will put something in event viewer so it can be fixed. Don't forget, if you're using deduplication, if you've got one block that's been used by 100 files, and that one is corrupt, you got an issue. Yeah? Alright, enable a volume. How you do that? Right click on the volume, enable deduplication, put some settings. If you have 5 volumes on the server, can you have for each volume different settings? Yes. So every setting is per volume. Yeah? And those settings are actually somewhere saved on that volume. Again, like you want to take the USB device and move it to another server, so it will keep track of it. Alright. PowerShell, you can do the same thing, but as I said in videos, you can see those things. Now let's look a bit more into that. I already said it's a filter driver on top of NTFS. You know that. And you will also see a service in Windows Server 2012 or R2, which is called DDPSVC, Deduplication Service, if I'm not mistaken, sounds logical. And that's running, and that's responsible for kicking off all the tasks. That's it. I told you about the garbage collection. Remember, it's intensive. Do not do it at the same time. Optimization is the process of doing the deduplication. You have two types. You have optimization and you got unoptimization. Unoptimization means you're undeduping. One thing I do want to tell you about undeduping them is the problem with deduplication is you got a volume of 50 gigabyte, right? So you're deduping and boom, 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 you got 10 gigabyte and then you're storing some more stuff, great. So you got 25 deduped, gigabyte of dedupe. Then you want to undedupe them, but the 50 gigabyte is not enough anymore, right? So you do an undedupe and then it certainly says, hey, volume is full. This has an issue. Which means then you might think, let's pause the deduplication, take out already the files that are undeduped to another volume, so I create again space. He doesn't see it. He still keeps saying, no, I'm full. No, I just gave you another 20 gig. No, I'm full. Which means you can get into issues. If you want to undedupe, the easiest way is copy files, well, not file by file, but parts of the files, a couple of gigabytes at a time, to an undeduped volume. Do not use the undedupe of them because you might get into trouble and you will get into a loop and you will never get out of it unless you reboot. Which is of course something you don't want, yeah?
Is there a check, like the estimation, how much you can save, how much it will be when you undedupe it?
How much it's in total,
Yeah,
right?
it will be.
Oh.
So it's some kind of check exit.
There's nothing in the GUI, but what you're going to do is you're going to select all the files and you're going to see what is the size. So he does see it in the volume, you will see what the real size is, okay? Which can be 120 gigabyte on a 50 gigabyte drive and your boss is going to say, what? But it is possible.
Okay.
All right. What else? Wrong clicker. Scrubbing, as I said and explained, was scrubbing, right? What's my time? Damn it. All right, quickly. Important to know is what happens with these files, right? So we got file A, we got file B, I don't know, a Word file, an Excel file, doesn't matter. We're going to see, oh, we got A, B, C, the same thing, then we got some difference. Important to know is that even the blocks which are still unique are going to go into the same story. And that is our most favorite folder on Windows Server, the System Volume Information folder. You know, the one where we try to go inside and it always tells us access denied. That's where everything is stored. It gets compressed as well. Not only deduplicated, but it's get compressed as well. Okay? For the jobs, how do you want to force it? Certainly in the beginning, because then you're using the double of the resources than by letting it do it manually. PowerShell, start, dedupe job, and then you have the type optimization, or type unoptimization, type scrubbing, type garbage collection. That's it, PowerShell. Or go to the task scheduler and start from there. That's also a solution. But you know, a quick PowerShell would give you that. Right? So some settings and some policies. Roy said per volume. Chunk size will be automatically between 32 KB and 128 KB. On average, you will see that it will be around 8, more or less. That's what they most of the time see. It's compressed. Everything less than 3 days is ignored. Or I told you can change it to 0 if you want. And also, every file smaller than 32 KB is also ignored, which is logical since we started at 232 KB. If you have encryption, you basically are useless with deduplication. Funny thing is, if you put BitLocker on, it works. But Microsoft does not want to support it. But it works. And again, don't put it, on the C volume because that's a couple of times. All right. The decisions you need to take and where you really have to think about this, but I said it already, scrubbing the garbage, collecting, change those intervals. I most of the time change it to Sunday because Sunday is my day that I don't do maintenance. I play with my kids, so that's the moment my machines can run, right? Think about which folders you want to exclude, what kind of extensions you want to exclude, okay? And how many days. Again, if you got a large file server and you're start big, and then gradually go smaller, just to make sure that it can go through these cycles. These are all the PowerShell components. Do I know them? Not at all. What I use, get command, module, deduplication, and it will just show me. Okay? Some of the settings we discussed, you cannot through the GUI. You need to use PowerShell. And I'm afraid in the future, Microsoft is going to do that more, less in the GUI. And if you really want some specific settings, go to PowerShell to do it, right? Very simple. And you know, this is what I normally use when I do this for a company. What's the important one? Well, import a module if you're doing it remotely. Get the status to see what it's doing. Set the dedupe volume to enable a volume, pretty simple. Start the dedupe job to force it. And finally, help dedupe will give you the help information you need, okay, if you don't know how to use it. Right. Yeah, PowerShell. Let's talk quickly about VDIs. Now, what is supported? And actually, this is great that I'm just behind Adrian's session, because Hyper-V VDI on a scale-out file server installation. That is supported. The only thing you have to know is there is a few things you have to think about. So it's post-processing methods. So even if you decide to deploy 100 VMs on a volume and you know you're going to save a lot of space, you first need that space. Of course you can do tricks, right? First put 10 on them, dedupe them, put another 10 on them, dedupe them, and so on. Well, you have to think about it. And we saw already people, it doesn't work. Well, yeah, do not try everything at the same time, right? But the nice thing is, it's using caching. Right? And the funny thing is, and that's where many people say, I don't believe it, your VDIs will be faster than on a non-dedupe volume. I believe I come back to that, if I'm not mistaken.
In fact,
No, I
the
don't.
caching provided by dedupe is faster than cluster shared volumes block cache.
Here we go. Thank you.
Stole it?
Yeah, you stole it.
Sorry.
But it also avoids the boot storm, because what you have in a VDI environment in the morning, 9 o'clock, everybody comes in, start VM, boot storm. Let's get coffee. Okay, I like it as an end user, so it means I've got 20 more minutes before I have to start working, but as an administrator, it's not fun, right? And certainly if you're in a VDI environment where your guest operating systems are, you know, Windows 7, Windows 8, a lot of that stuff is exactly the same. Since you then use that caching method, and a lot of that stuff is the same, comes into that cache, they boot up much faster. Okay? So you actually will be able to save. I'm trying to wrong again. All right, how you do this? Enable dedupe volume on a cluster storage volume, but you're gonna say usage type Hyper-V. Or if you're gonna do it through the GUI, you're gonna choose when you enable a volume, you're gonna say, click on the thing and say VDI specific. Okay. Otherwise it will be ready for files. And now it will be ready for VDIs. The reason for that is, if you use the file deduplication, that means partial files are not optimized, which means you basically will never have a VDI that's being optimized, because it will be run. But by saying optimize partial files, it will automatically then be ready to do it live on a VDI that's actually running. Now I put this here because you needed to do this in the preview for yourself. If you're not using the preview, and I hope that nobody is still using RT preview by now, this is done for you, but you know you can, you know, with PowerShell you can see those things. And I already told you in case of low storage, put a few VMs on it, start the job, see it shrink, do more, but also do things when you want to remove them from deduplication, then you want to get it. All right. Sorry for the speeding, but I've got 7 minutes left. So let's look at a few conclusions. These are not mine, by the way. These are official ones of Microsoft. But if you look at it, they say on general documents we're talking about 50 to 60% savings. I think that's nice for a software-based deduplication that comes in an operating system, right? And it's free. Well, not the operating system. 30 to 50% documents, that's Office. That's their own document, so they have actually less savings than on other. But 70 to 80% you can gain on certain applications. Think about web servers, think about line of business applications, those static content providers, pretty nice. And everything which has to do with VHD, ISOs, templates, and those, 80 to 95%. And we're not kidding, you can make it. The 80% is normal. The 95% is unique, but you can get close. So a lot of savings you can get. Now, of course, you have to, what about performance? Boom. How much time are we going to lose? And this is funny because we're back at the caching mechanism here. So when you write data to a disk, you don't have performance loss because remember, post-processing. Now what happens when you read data? So let's take a quick example, and my apologies, we're going to use you, but you're a fast guy, you go into the office, 7 o'clock in the morning. Something like that? No? No. Anyway, 7 o'clock in the morning. So you're the first one, you open a Word document, and you are the one with a small performance hit because it's deduped. Yeah? Will you see it as an end user? No way, but it is there. You come at 8 o'clock, you open Excel file. Probably there are some blocks the same, so those are already in the cache. So you might have no loss, or might even gain something. You're number 3, you come in the afternoon, you like to work in the evening, something like that, great. You open a PowerPoint slide, you're probably winning all that. Just because of the caching mechanism. Yeah? Is it reliable? That's of course, we're talking about deduplication. Again, I tell you, 5 minutes?
Yeah.
That's recorded. We got one block for 100 files. That block gets corrupt. Oops. The reason why they have the data scrubbing, the reason also where they have other mechanisms, one of them is called hotspots. By default, if a block is referenced at 100 times, it will create a copy of that block, a hotspot. Do you think 100 is not enough? Use PowerShell, change it to 50. And you will see a lot of hotspots that get deduplicated. Now in all the time I'm using it, and I'm actually using it before Windows Server 2012 was out, I've never had a single issue or data corruption. I haven't said it won't happen. It can happen, so back it, right? Where you can use it for capacity optimization, scale up performance works very well, but don't go over the 1 terabyte files. He doesn't care to work on hundreds of terabytes if you can do it in pieces. But if the file itself is larger as 1 terabyte, then it might get into issues. And then Microsoft, of course, tells you it's so easy because you use it with your familiar tools, which is the GUI and PowerShell. I'll leave that to you. A few tips, make sure, to plan ahead, as I said. Do not just enable it, start, and then run away, hoping that the end user won't call you because everything gets slow. But make sure you plan ahead. You can use this in combination with branch cache if you use that. And it will save you bandwidth and storage at the same time on the other side. Because the branch cache mechanism knows about it. It knows that a certain block that needs to be sent is actually already there, so it won't send it again. Pretty cool. It works with failover clusters, so you can use it in there. It works with DFS replication. DFS doesn't even know what's happening. So it doesn't care, and it works as well. But single instance storage cannot be on a volume that you said, or a server where you're using it. Now, I'm not sure who is actually still using this, but it still exists, okay? Well, DPA. And board does take backups. It's still, what? It still is deduplication. So make sure that you take backups. And it must be a backup vendor that supports it. There are three types of backup vendors. One are the backup vendors, they cannot back up the dedupe volume. The second type is a backup vendor, they can back it up, but rehydrate the backup storage, so back to normal size. And then you have a backup vendor that realize, oh, this is just deduplication, fine, we'll keep it like. Just ask it. That's the, do we support it? Yes or no? That's the question. All right? Think about that evaluation tool to do it before you enable it on a volume. Otherwise it won't work anymore. And with that, I believe more or less in time. With 1 minute left, are there any questions left before you can go to the dinner? Yes.
Can you change the caching size?
In 2012 R2, yes. In 2012, I don't think that was possible. That was fixed.
Only R2.
2012 R2, you can. PowerShell, by the way.
Yeah. What's the standard size?
Ooh. I have to come back to that. I have no idea.
Find out.
Yeah, but the standard size and total, no idea.
Doesn't matter.
It's a percentage, but sorry.
And processing use multiple cores, multiple threads?
Per volume, only one core. Yeah. Yeah. But if you have multiple volumes, if you got 16 or something, and you got 16 cores, then yes, then it's possible to do it in parallel. But per volume, one core. All right. More questions? Otherwise, you will find me somewhere outside or inside, or with a beer. Probably that one. Thank you. Have a great lunch. See you.
Guys, if you could just grab your sandwich and just go to room 1, please, for the next event announcement.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will leave it here. I will return to this room.
So that'd be an
Ja, zo in je logo.
Which Microsoft internally call it a storage brick. So we have not Yeah, it's a Windows cluster. So all clusters are Windows clusters and everything rolls on top of it. And so we would change the word item to storage brick. It's not a public term, but it's one of the terms we use in the term.